Welcome! Yesterday I was browsing through some of the LASCO data from SOHO and noticed that there was a comet heading towards the Sun. It turns out this comet crashed into the outer atmosphere of the Sun, burned up and was destroyed. We see a lot of these so-called sun-grazing comets, but they're always interesting to watch. And this video is about the life and death of that particular comet. As I said, there are many of these sorts of sun-grazing comets that rarely survive the close encounter with the Sun. They're probably bits of a much larger comet that broke up during an earlier solar encounter, and so following all along a similar trajectory. Just to orient you as far as the picture is concerned, in the middle of the picture you'll see a black circle shown here above. That is the occulting disk. That's the part of the instrument that occults the very bright surface of the Sun, so we can see this fainter outer corona. The real side of the Sun is shown here with a helium-304 image in the middle. The inner orange area shown in the picture here is from the C2 instrument. That's a higher resolution but smaller field of view instrument. And the blue area that you'll see in the movie is actually from the C3 instrument, which has got a much bigger field of view but is at much lower resolution. Here you see the comet coming in from the southwest. That's at about 4 o'clock on the clock dial. You can just see it now. It's just beginning to approach the red inner circle of the C2 field of view. As it approaches, the tail gets longer and longer, yet the nucleus of the comet seems to get dimmer. One thing to note here is how much the comet changes as it comes into the field of view. When it first appears in the C2 field of view as shown here, you can see it has a distinct head. That's the nucleus plus a fuzzy outer atmosphere called the coma. As the comet progresses, that coma gets smaller and less distinct. Here, about 3 hours into seeing it in the C2 field of view, it's about half the size it was before. Just before it enters the area covered by the occulting disk, there seems to be almost no head of the comet at all, and it just steadily disappears. While there is a solid comet left before it is destroyed, it will follow a particular orbit. And I've marked here the location of the nucleus of the comet as it was approaching the Sun, and you can see it follows a fairly straight line. Now, along that dashed line there would be the direction that the tail should have shown, and in fact, for most of the time it did. But once the comet got too close to the Sun and presumably evaporated away into dust and gas, this relationship seems to change. After the comet has disappeared behind the occulting disk, we can still see the tail for quite some time, several hours in fact. But note the tail no longer falls along that nice trajectory that we had before. It seems to be moving sideways. Now obviously this comet doesn't come out the other side, so it didn't survive, and so this tail is just merely gas and dust. And the fact that it's moved away from the trajectory of the comet probably means that it's being swept away by the solar wind. This comet was probably part of one of the sun-grazing family of comets. It obviously did not survive its encounter with the Sun, but it never likely reached the surface of the Sun because it was evaporated away into a cloud of dust and ice long before it ever got that close. Remember, at these distances the Sun is probably between 10,000 and 100,000 times hotter to an observer than it is where we are now. The comet likely evaporated into a cloud of dust, and that is being swept away by the solar wind. Now this is the fate of most of the sun-grazing comets. Very, very few of them ever survive a close encounter with the Sun. So until next time, stay safe and goodbye.